Hey everybody, welcome to the live demonstration that I'm doing tonight for cabinetry painting, promoting my course that I just launched and I'm offering. In the link below or somewhere on the screen. You can find the link or you can message me. But just starting off, I want to tell you just a couple housekeeping things of what we're going to be doing. So first, tonight, we're going to show you, or I'm going to show you how to take a golden oak cabinet and turn it into this. I know most of you give me those pain points that you have golden oak and you just don't know what to do. We are going to start off, how's that reach? With this really dirty piece here. It's got some yuck on it. So we're going to go through the whole process of cleaning it and prepping it, priming it, painting, the whole thing tonight. Also, one more thing. I'm sure you've heard of my home care improvement planner. And with the cabinetry course launched now through Saturday, this planner is free for those who sign up for the course. You can see it is chocked full of information in here. All of the checklists, budgets, and everything you need to improve your home. So it walks you through each room, things to think about, budgets to write, floor plans to draw, maintenance, all of the things. So this is free to you, bonus for signing up for the cabinetry course through Saturday. So we'll get started. First off, we are going, so most of the time when we finish cabinetry for clients, we are spraying cabinetry. But I started off with just hand painting with a brush and a roller, and I'm going to show you the products I use to make sure you have a nice smooth finish, just like it were to be sprayed. You can do it in your house. I use this same method if I'm painting anything from kitchen cabinetry, bathroom vanities, actual furniture, or even trim and doors and things like that. You would use the same exact method. So by following all of the steps, you can achieve almost any paint project in your house. So let's get started. I'm going to switch my camera over to show you face down everything that I'm doing, but I just want to show you quickly something that'll save you. So this will save you in space and mess. These little triangles, they're just little stands, okay? I'm going to use these to set my piece on today when we start painting so that you can get all of the edges and it's not touching whatever surface you're sitting it on to where you're going to have paint all over a table or whatever you're using. So we're going to start off with washing our piece and then making sure it's dry and clean and ready to go, and then priming, and then we'll apply paint. I do just use a bucket of soapy water. Dawn dish soap has been the best for us. Degreaser, it's just easy to clean your cabinets with it. We also use these, they're like SOS pads, but they're considered sanding pads. There's actually a grit to them. Now this isn't to be confused with steel wool. Do not do that. Use these sanding, they're softer than that, but they are rough enough to where it is sanding your piece to create that mechanical bond for applying your paint. So you don't have to go through with like orbital sanders or hand sanding or anything like that just to get the surface prepped. Now, if you have imperfections and different things that you need to sand out, obviously a sander would need to be used. But this is what we use for cleaning. And the other benefit to doing this is when you start sanding cabinetry, what you do is you really go through the finish, and especially with oak cabinets, a lot of times once you get through the finish, you will have what's called bleed through, which is the tannins in the wood coming back up through your paint. And the only way to mitigate that from happening is using an oil-based primer, which can get kind of messy and hard to handle. So don't sand through all of your surfaces. You don't need to remove the previous finish. The combination of creating a mechanical bond with this sanding pad or cleaning pad and the type of primer we use, it creates enough bite that you don't have issues with your paint failing. So we will get started here. I'm gonna swap over and show you the bottom. Okay. Here we are. So on this piece, let me just make sure I can get you all of the things. All right, we've got our cleaning bucket. Like I said, it has just dish soap in it. And then these cabinet doors, if you look super closely, you can see they've been sitting in our workshop for probably a year, I guess, waiting for this demo, actually. But there's lots of dust on here, which most cabinetry is dirty, especially along these bottom edges or whichever way your door hangs. You will have like water or, excuse me, you know, spills and different things end up being down here. So we're going to use different tools such as these picks and some brushes to actually get them clean. And then I picked this one particularly because if you look over here, right here, you can see there is a ton of yuck buildup below where that handle was. And we're going to use a product called Crud Cutter. Now I have all my stuff in not factory labeled spray bottles because we buy it in bulk, but it is called Crud Cutter with a K. I just use the original kind. And what this will do is get all the like gummy stuff off. So I particularly use it for cabinetry that is above stoves. So where you've got, you know, lots of oil and grease. And I don't spray the whole thing down necessarily if we don't need to, but I am going to spray this spot and let it sit for just a little bit while we scrub the rest of it. So hot soapy water. And I just start off by taking a layer off, really. Getting in all the crevices. And then, like I said, we will use our brush tools and crevice tools to get through all the yuck. If you're doing an entire kitchen, make sure you're swapping out your water frequently. You can definitely tell once it starts getting yucky. And obviously you don't want to be scrubbing around dirty water. So make sure you swap your water frequently, keep it hot. The key really is in the prep. I'm telling you, if you can make sure that you've prepped your cabinetry really, really, really well, you will not have a failed finish. Most of the time when you see it go bad is when somebody tells you to never prime, or somebody says this paint doesn't require priming, or maybe you should have top coated the type of paint that was used versus one that does not require a top coat. So it's just all in that prep and what combination of products you're using. Okay, so from this spot that I sprayed, I let that sit for just a minute. So we're just gonna, and this could be gunk or it could just be finish from the previous handle that was there. Who knows? But get it as best as possible. If you can see closely, it is lightening up that whole area and taking that finish off just a little bit. Okay, so now that I've got a layer off of it, I am going to use just like these dental pick tools. I pick up packs of these at Harbor Freight. They come in kind of a multi-pack, super helpful. And I just run them across the crevices, especially the corners, because when you scrub, you're putting all that gunk back in the corner. And if you had lots of spills, it'll get all caught up in there. So it's super important to just run it across. And then also these little scrubber brushes, you could use a toothbrush. I'm sure you've all got extra toothbrushes laying around from the dentist. You can use that to get in all those little crevices. One of the things to remember is that in paneled doors like this, this is actually two different pieces. So the center is considered a floating panel, and it's not actually glued to your exterior. So it's just kind of squished in there. So keep in mind that if it slides or moves, you may need to shift it one way or the other to get all the gunk out. But it's made to be like that for expansion and contraction of the wood. Otherwise, things will crack if it's glued together. So in Minnesota, we obviously have lots of weather changes, and that makes a difference on the movement of that wood. So you maybe see that in different things where something shrinks and then the finish looks different. That is why, is because those things are two different pieces. Okay, so once it's clean, you saw I did that all the crevices. We're going to dry it off real good. And of course, when you're doing an entire kitchen, you would want to do the same steps through the whole area before moving on to the next step. So clean them and then dry them individually and then move on to the next one. Once everything is clean, that's when you would start priming. So don't get ahead of yourself to the next step, because you will end up with a mess or forget where you're at. So once they are all clean, now obviously I'm not going to do it here, but you would clean the back side as well. And then they would be set and ready to go. Okay, so once it's dry, again, I usually just leave them, go on to the next one. But the next step will actually be to use denatured alcohol. And now if we had to sand anything, we would, but we don't need to sand anything here. But again, I just have it in a spray bottle. So denatured alcohol, it is 50-50 denatured alcohol and water. And if you sand, or if you really, between every coat of what we're going to do, we're going to denature. And it just gets your surface cleaner and gets that last little bit of debris off of all of it. So I like to spray just my towel. I'll just tell you too, I do use these white shop rags versus a standard paper towel. These do not leave any lint behind, where some cheap paper towels are going to fall apart on you real fast. This is more like a cloth. So just wipe the denature across the whole thing. It's just going to make sure it's all dry and all ready to go. So again, in an ideal world, we would be waiting between all of these little steps and everything would be super dry. But for this demo purpose, we're going to fast track it. Just a reminder, there's a link to buy our cabinet course in the live, or you can send me a message or put your questions in the chat. All right, now back to, we're ready to actually prime at this point, super fast. So I'm going to use my triangles and set up my piece here. Okay, cool. All right, so prime wise, see, I already had a brush and everything kind of ready to go here, but all of the details and every single step is in the course with videos and supply lists and links and all the things. So this is the primer that I use. It's called Sticks. I get it at my local Ace Hardware. Other paint stores may recommend something else. This is just what I use and what I know works. It will literally stick to tile, glass, all the things. So I like using it because once it's gone through its cure time, you can scratch it and it's not going to come off. And remember, I said that priming is key, so we want to make sure we're using something really high quality. What I like to use then to apply, I use these handy pails. I prefer this size because it does have this roller part here. I did put some primer in here earlier, and we are using a 4-inch Purdy handle, a 2-inch brush with an angle on it, and then we are using right here these ultra finish microfiber rollers on the handle. So that's what's going to give you your smooth surface. Not only is the quality of the paint that we have giving you the smooth surface, it's also what you're using to apply it. So we're going to use a combination of brush and roller for this. And I like to use my brush and just dab it off. You want some on your brush. You don't need to take it all off. It has a pretty good open time, so you can manipulate this product for a little while before it starts getting sticky. So I like to do all of your crevices first and any kind of intricate detail, and then come back over and do the flat surfaces with the roller. So we're just going to paint. Doesn't have to look great. Get it in the corners. The time for perfection will come when you're doing your last coat, and the sanding in between is what will give you that smooth surface. So don't overthink it. Dab in the corners and then pull out. It's best to work from a corner and then out. Like I said before when we were cleaning, you don't want to go into the corner with your gunk. You want to pull it out. Otherwise, you will get pooled spots and drips, and you might end up having to sand some things out. The nice thing about painting cabinetry by hand is actually that you can get in all of the grain. So oak cabinets specifically usually have a really deep grain, and no matter how many coats of spray you put on it, you usually have to do a roller coat at some point in between because of the grain. So as you can see, this roller, it is showing a little bit of a texture to it, but I promise you it's not going to look like that in the end. But because we're using these little stands that I've got this on, we can just paint the edges. And there's no mess on whatever surface you're working with. I mean, obviously put a drop cloth down on your table, but this definitely helps with not having drips or anything. If you're working slow and your paint does start to get goopy, it's better just to abandon it and let it dry and then sand out whatever the imperfection might be. If you, again, overwork it in any paint, that's when you're going to run into problems. I have seen the recommended Sherwin-Williams product for cabinetry painting doesn't have a lot of open time, and if you overwork it, you will get a gooey mess. So that's why I like using this Benjamin Moore Scuff X that I'm going to show you. Okay, the other thing that's really awesome about these rollers is you see how the end is fluffy also? The whole thing is. When you go into some of these detail parts, you're not rubbing a piece of plastic across it like some rollers are, or if you've ever painted with painted walls, the ends are just plastic. This is super helpful to get in all of those crevices. I also use these for any interior painting. So instead of brushing a corner, for instance, you can just run this floofy part right into the corner and paint the whole darn thing, both sides of the wall, and you have no brush trimming to do. I also use these interior painting when we do cut with a brush. I roll out all of our brush strokes or whatever if we're not coming immediately back with wall paint right behind. So these are a savior if you do any kind of painting. I highly recommend them. Okay, so just that fast, we've got a prime coat on. So we cleaned and now we primed And if you're doing an entire kitchen, by the time you get down to the end, you would have this side dry and you could flip them all over and do it again. Or if you were at the step where you were ready to add paint, it will be dry by the time you get through the whole entire thing. Now, this is the same process that you would use for doing your actual cabinet frames. Obviously, we took off the doors because we don't want to paint over hardware. Take off the doors, and then you would paint your frames the same exact way, cleaning and doing all the things. So I'm going to set this one aside to dry. I actually have one that's already dry that we can talk about doing top coat. Okay. All right, so here's one that's already dry. You will want to do a little bit of sanding, especially if you see any kind of rough spots, like right here. I can feel there's something stuck in there, so we're gonna make sure that's off. I sand in between coats with 220 grit. I like to use these sanding nets by Diablo. You can find them at Home Depot. They are literally a net, and these fit on our orbital sander. I like to keep things pretty consistent on our uses, so I don't buy any square paper or anything like that. We just use these round ones, and I usually put them just on an old block or a piece of wood, something to keep your pressure the same. So I just wrap it around, and then we'll sand over the surface a little bit. You want to just be cautious of not going at a weird angle to where you're going to burn through the edge. The primer is not going to withstand you really scuffing on the edge, so be conscious of that when you're sanding. I usually just rub my hand across to see if there's any weird imperfections, and then we will do our same process with denatured alcohol to get the sanding dust off. If you do have a vacuum that has the brush attachment on the end, you can vacuum between each. If you had to do a little bit more heavy sanding, vacuum all the crevices in between each coat and then do your denatured alcohol. But lots of times we don't necessarily have to do that. We can just wipe them all down and it picks up all the dust. Okay. So I'm going to switch over my brush and roller to a new one. So handy peel liner into the holder. The awesome thing about these also is they have a magnet, so your brush isn't sitting in your pile of paint. So I've already stirred my paint. I'm just going to dump a little bit in here. The color I chose for today, I know we had questions out there of what we should paint. I chose Accessible Beige by Sherwin-Williams. We've done a couple different projects with this color, whether it was walls or cabinetry, but it's very much a warm tone. If you don't like the stark white look of things, this is a great color to choose. So we're going to do the same exact process as we did before. Paint in the entire perimeter and then add our roller top coat. If you are doing very dark cabinets and you're trying to go white, you may have to do extra coats. I recommend, because it's less expensive, is to do more priming coats to try to get your color to be stark white. Sometimes if you just keep adding more and more, it still seems like it's see-through of the top coat. So My recommendation is if you're going from, super dark, like a mocha cabinet of some sort, then do a couple coats of primer to get that good coverage. It's never going to hurt it. As long as you're waiting between your dry times, follow the instructions on the cans, of course, for your dry time. Running a fan is always helpful. You can speed up the tackiness process, but make sure you follow for cure time and such. Got our paint. See how this color is just ever so subtle? So this paint does have imperfection there. Paint does have self-leveling properties. So again, when you see maybe a little bit of a brush stroke or a little bit of a roller pattern, it's going to level itself out as it dries. So again, that's a nice thing about using some of these acrylic style paints. They are still water-based. So back in the day, that's why oil-based paint was so popular, was because it had good open time. It self-leveled really, really, really well. But they're just messy. You can't clean them up with water. They're smelly. So the paint industry has gone really far as the chemistry of everything and what you can get in water-based. So this is Scuff-X is what I use. We have used this even on walls if you're in like a garage or somewhere, even like a kid's playroom or something that is maybe going to have a lot of rough and tough things going on. I would recommend, got a little imperfection in the paint there. I would recommend using this product because it's going to withstand all of that. Okay. That's that. Look at how easy that was. Let me see if I can show you how that lays nice and flat surface here. So you can still see that little bit of a texture maybe, but it's going to dry flat. And then in between, you would add 2 coats total. So you'd let this one dry and then you would do that same sanding method. At that time, I usually recommend more like a 320 grit. The higher grit number, the less rough it is. So if you're using something like 60 grit, that's going to look like somebody took nails across your piece. But this will self-level out and dry, and then you would add your second coat to it. And that's it. And then you can reinstall your cabinets within just a couple days. So let's see here. Switch over. You can see our lovely shop. Okay. Back. All right. I wanted to talk about a couple other things. So just a reminder, if you purchase the cabinetry course, you get the free ebook planner for all of your projects. And then by Saturday. And then I want to talk about hardware here for a second. So I have these hardware boards and I want to show you some features when you're trying to pick out hardware, because this is like my number one question. So aside from swapping out hinges, which is most easy to swap out like for like. So if you have tarnished, terrible, exposed hinges, you might want to swap them out for the same exact kind. But handles, you get a little bit more of choice in as far as changing out how big they are and things like that. So as you saw in the sample piece that we were using, it had 1 hole. So the nice thing about doors that only have 1 hole is you don't have to stick to just putting a knob back on it, and you can choose any kind of size for an actual handle. The nice thing is you would use that current hole and then just add another one to whatever length it needed to be. I like to do the longer ones on any doors that are really tall, and even sticking to a knob if it's like your counter or your microwave style door, small door, sticking to a knob. And then I personally love comboing in a third choice, which is the cup style pull for your drawers. Now, if your drawers currently have a single hole, like a knob, going to a cup pull, which they're typically 3 inches apart, you can do that without filling the old hole. So when you add 2 more holes to attach this, that old hole is in the center here and you will never see it. So if you're worried about changing your hardware, that's one of my tips on swapping out your drawers. Now, the other thing that is awesome is sometimes old doors come in weird sizes for what they currently had for a handle space. And it might be 2.5 inches we've seen in some like 1940s, 1950s homes, which is small. However, these top 2 right here, you can see really close. So they've got this bar that slides through these 2 little loops. I'll show you on the side. See how that slides through there? So these are adjustable. So what you do is you put the attachment point wherever your hole is, obviously, and then when you tighten it, it holds this bar in. So if you have ones that are really, really odd, adjustables they're literally called adjustable, and they're by Liberty Hardware. So they are awesome because you can swap out any of them really in any kind of scenario. It also comes in black. Let's see, I think I only have one size here, but there's a black one. But these are my favorites in black, all the different profiles. I like to stick to ones that give us all the different size options because you can combo them together. So like these 12-inch ones, a lot of times they're called appliance pulls, but be aware that if you search appliance pulls, some of them are $100 a piece. But these certain lines will carry a 12-inch pull that is less expensive if you're just wanting to swap hardware. But I like this specific profile because it does come in the 12, the 6, the 5, and the 3, and then still looks really good with like a drum knob or a more modern circle. And you can still add the cup to that whole look. As long as you're sticking with the same finish, that is my biggest recommendation on hardware. Be aware that if you're getting matte black, that you don't combo it with something that is glossy black. Or if you're picking gold, you're picking the right, stick with the same manufacturer would be the best bet. So like these are all champagne gold by Liberty Hardware. And I love them because it's kind of subtle and it's never going to look brassy like a lot of 1990s things do. So I love this one when you pair it with any color. I've put these on black. I've put them on this accessible beige, or even white is what I have in my house. So just be aware of your golds, that you're sticking with the same brand, same line of color. So that's hardware that I wanted to talk about. Does anybody have, oh yeah, love the cup style. Yes. See, just swap out if you're scared to do your cabinetry, like buy the course, watch my live demo again, and get comfortable with maybe a piece of furniture first. But what you can do with your cabinetry is just swap your hardware. So before deep diving into painting, swap your hardware, do some test pieces, and then paint your cabinetry. It's really not scary, I promise. And you can always send me a message. So I think that's probably all I've got. That was a quick demo. See how fast you can paint all your cabinets? 30 minutes that took, you guys, 30 minutes. Yeah, so I'll just show you once more on this final piece that's here. So remember I said this was an oak cabinet? You can still see the grain. Like you're not going to fill it necessarily, but by rolling into it, you're hiding all of the darkness. I think a lot of times oak cabinets specifically, what's drawing your eye to hate it is there's so many different variations in the grain color. So it's like there's dark spots and there's lighter spots, or one cabinet door looks different than the other and it just seems busy. But it's not necessarily the grain you're not liking, it's the color change between the grains. So if you have a high quality door, keep them, just add a new finish to it. And you would wish you did it a long time ago because it brightens up your space. Or if you're going dark, adds depth and dimension and drama to it too, if you pick a black. And my recommendation for black is always Tricorn Black by Sherwin-Williams. We like to stick with kind of the same colors. This one, I believe, is a pure white by Sherwin-Williams. Again, what we painted was accessible beige. My other, not as stark white, more of a creamy favorite is Alabaster. And then Tricorn Black for anything darker. And then if you want to be really ambitious, you could, of course, choose any color your heart desires for your cabinets. But those are my neutrals that I try to stay with. And then obviously contrast it with your walls. So that'll depend on what you choose there. So any questions, again, just let me know. Even if you're watching this after the fact, send me a message, write in the comments. We will pay attention to all of that. You have till Saturday to get the free planner. Seriously, life changer. If you are digital girly, you can keep it as a PDF and just use your tablet or whatever you've got for writing and write directly in it. Like, look at these pages. Let's just talk about this for once. I want to show you this one. Okay, project overview. Okay, I designed all of this because this is what you need. So it's talking about your scope, okay, and your budget, start date, deadline, if you've got them. People who are having parties, like graduation coming up, like, get on this. You've got some deadlines to meet. But we've got your overall scope. You can put your milestones in here, any notes or things that you have for it. And then each section, you can sketch a layout if you need it. You can summarize all of your milestones and tasks for all the projects joined together. You can lay it out in a calendar style. Let's see, what else do we have? You can determine what kind of tools you need, and if you have it, you're going to buy it or borrow it. Helps with your budget, because a lot of times you'll start doing some of this and you don't have the right tool. And that's where projects can get out of control, is when you need to buy so many supplies for it. But painting is very minimal and it can make the biggest impact. So everything else is just costs and plumbing and electrical and all lighting, paint, all the things you need to summarize your project in your planner. You can print multiple pages of the same collection and do that for every single project. But yeah, game changer. It also, the whole beginning includes all the maintenance for your house, because we all need reminders. It's spring, guys. Time to spring clean. Okay, well, I think I'm going to let everybody go for the evening. I included a link to everything that you need. And again, just let me know how I can help. Or if you start tackling something and you're like, I'm not doing it, send me a message, put in an inquiry. We'd love to do your project for you. So have a good evening. Hope to see you guys some more in the group, and let me know if I can help. See you later.